thank you so much for taking a minute out. And as we established before we went on, you're in Chicago, I'm in Kansas City. We have both have ties. So I want to begin our conversation before we get into your life and your work by asking you something that I know we're all tired of, which is COVID and the pandemic. But ultimately, how did you survive the pandemic, and how has it changed the way that you live your life now?
Well, when that hit, I had just gotten a job working down in Florida and with a company, medical, they were a medical group. So I just had moved to Florida and then that went remote pretty quickly. So then I had an apartment down there, but I came back up to Chicago and, was working remote for most of that time. And I had already kind of been that way. I had been a CMO for several years. And then when I left that role, I have mostly been doing consulting and some fractional CMO work. So I have really already been remote for, since 2019 already. So a year before COVID, I had already really been remote. So for me, it wasn't a massive change. The worst thing for me here in Illinois was when um, the governor instituted masks even at the gym. So I like to run. That's what I do for exercise. So you're trying to do that on a treadmill. I couldn't do it. So that was the worst thing for me. But otherwise, you know, it was more of an annoyance really. But I was lucky that I was already remote and doing consulting. So it did not have a massive, huge disruption for me like it did for so many other folks. Um, and I got incredibly lucky, which is rare for me. Luck doesn't usually happen for me. So, it's just the way my career was already going
Yeah.
that I just happened to be remote at the time and it didn't impact me. And then people started looking for remote marketing and then fractional work. And I was already in the space,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of worked out for me, where I know it didn't for a lot of people and it's awful, but
Yeah.
you know,
I get
um,
it. I,
I had a really rough time right leading into that. So it was okay for me I had a
your
business
karmics.
blow up on me and I just got
Yeah.
murdered in a business that just failed catastrophically. So, you know,
You,
um,
yeah.
so it
Your
was
car.
okay for me to have a spate of good luck.
Yeah. Your karma was, your scales
I,
were,
eh,
yeah, they should have tipped. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do as a marketing guru and a fractional CMO. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. One of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I help businesses get seen by more people so that more people buy from them.
Okay.
That's pretty much what we do,
Yeah.
and what I do is my job is just to help businesses be seen. Because if you want to get purchased, you have to be known. And to be known, you have to be seen. And there's so
Absolutely.
much going on out there these days, so much noise, so much content that's not even marketing content,
Yeah.
just social media and everywhere, streaming services, TV shows, what all the media that's out there that just bombards consumers. How do you cut through all of that and get seen, noticed, and remembered? Because that's what it takes to be purchased. So that's what I help brands do is kind of cut through some of that noise, help them get seen and noticed, remembered, and purchased.
So when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, in the third grade, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Okay.
I I was big already reading The Right Stuff. Tom Wolfe, I had discovered that book, and
Yeah.
I wanted to be an astronaut and a pilot. So I was big into the space shuttle program.
Yeah.
Second grade, when I was in second grade, is when the shuttle launched. So I had started that. I too am, I I call it an Aspie fascination, but you do it's kind of how I am and my personality too, but you do those Aspie dives.
Yeah.
So I always joke about certain topics that I have an Asperger's level of knowledge on because that's what I am,
Yeah.
and if I have an interest in it, I'm going to go deep on it. So the space program is one of those things. So back at that time, I wanted to be an astronaut and a pilot.
So let's go back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised? What were these foundational seeds that got into you to get into marketing and to help businesses get to a better place?
I was born in at University of Missouri in Columbia.
Okay.
Um, my dad was in medical school there at the time, so I was born there. We lived in Kansas City area for a little while, but then moved up here to Chicago for my dad's careers. He was working through residency and all that stuff. And then we established in the western suburb of Chicago. I have kind of a weird path to marketing. I actually, my wife and I, we got married young, married since I was 17, actually. So this year is 34 years for us,
Wow.
coming up in a couple of weeks in November. Um, so we got married pretty young, and then I went into the army. So I did the army to help me get some school money and do that stuff. But actually, after the army, when I got out, I was in the restaurant business. So I was actually a restaurant general manager for 11 years before I got out of that. And then I kind of stumbled my way into marketing because as when I was a restaurant manager, I started a website years ago, 2008 timeline, 2009. I started a website, a blog about TV because I love TV, movies, pop culture. So I started a website called the Midwest TV Guys, and it was TV opinion from the Midwest because I always thought it's always East Coast or West Coast
Uh-huh.
people who get to talk about this. You know, let's tell you about TV and how those of us in flyover country view TV. So I started this website, and it was just meant to be fun. I would write about some TV stuff, and it was meant to be a fun little hobby, but it kept growing.
Yeah.
And so then I had to start learning SEO, and I learned, social media. Back then, social media was a little different and how you use social media to distribute your content. But, I started learning those things, SEO among them, and then writing content that was interesting for people. And I grew that, to where I was a member of the TV Academy. I used to vote on the Emmys too, out of this hobby. Then I went back to school and got a master's degree in human resources, trying to get out of the restaurant business. And I got a job then with a startup who was a online clothing business. And I was called the first adult hire at this place. So I was actually hired to be the director of human resources. So I was the first HR person. When I started, this company was Grunt Style. When I started there, I only had about 15 employees, 20 employees, and it was like a frat house. But I had experience with social media and stuff. So I started helping the social media team. And then I started a blog for us to help drive people to the website. And it just kind of started helping stuff. I had learned some about Facebook and Google ads through my website. So I started helping there. And I just started doing these things there as people do in startups. Everybody kind of helps everywhere you can if you have knowledge for something. And it evolved to where I became the chief marketing officer then, and I was a partner in that company. And we grew that to, when I left it, we were about 85 million a year
Wow.
in sales. So, they're bigger now. They're still around, very well known, probably one of the biggest veteran owned businesses, in the US in that space. So, it was a really great experience, but I came into it circuitously. I do not have my master's is human resources.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have a marketing background. It's just stuff that you learn, and it's about communicating with people, and understanding what people want to hear, like to hear, connecting with people, you know. And that's really what more selling and marketing is about. It's not necessarily that you're going to tell people we have the best product or best service because everyone knows you're going to say that. It's really more about creating, meaningful connections.
Yeah.
And that's how you create, raving fans who come back and they keep coming back, So yeah, it was a weird path
Yeah.
for me to get to where I am today, and I am grateful for all the other experiences that I've had because actually my time as a restaurant general manager, invaluable to me, especially in the marketing world, because marketing folks get a lot of dings for not knowing the business side.
Yeah.
Marketing folks tend not to know the P&L and how costs relate and that, right? There's a lot of dings on marketing folks, but as a general manager for a restaurant, I ran my restaurant and I was responsible for the P&L. So, I knew all of those things and, it was really valuable to me. And then you had to run your teams, and as your teams grow in marketing, managing restaurant teams is one of a great challenge, to keep everything going and afloat. So it was really valuable experience that helped me to get to where I am, but certainly was not a traditional route. I'm lucky that it was a startup because if anyone looked at my resume, there's no way, I would
Yeah.
have ever gotten hired for a
Yeah.
marketing job by anybody if I was looking for a marketing job.
So you've obviously been highly driven throughout your career. Who's been a hero or an inspiration for you?
Hmm. I don't, I like to watch a lot of folks and, I've had a couple of friends that I have worked with. So nobody really famous that that has really pushed me. It's more been folks in my life that nobody would know or think are famous or anything, right? Like I know a lot of folks like to point to the famous ones, but I've had a couple of good friends that were really good examples and role models that, showed me that, number one, life and work, you really got to have a balance there and family. So one of my best friends, my best friend I served in the army with, one of my best friends just died of cancer a couple of months ago. And he was one who, knowing him for over 30 years and watching how he worked hard, but then turned it off. When he left work, it turned it off and then it was family,
Yeah.
and you see that and you're like, oh, it is possible to be successful because he had risen in his career too. And you're like, you can actually balance things and have success. So,
Yeah.
he was one for sure. Jason's his name. And we met years and years ago as kids in the army, and then he ended up out here too after the army, living in the western suburbs. So um, here's one I would really point to, and some folks like that just aren't terribly famous. My mom is another one. You know, work hard, but take care of family.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, my wife and I have, like I said, we got married at 17. So there's some struggles
Yeah.
in there.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily an easy road,
Uh-huh.
and then to still be married 34 years later, you
That's
know,
remarkable. Yeah.
I think my wife too is another one. Just keep working, just keep driving. Understand there's going to be ups and downs. So you don't let the highs, you don't buy so into the highs too that you think it's always going to be this way. And you don't buy into the lows the same way. You don't let the lows wipe you out so much because the lows are not always going to be that way either.
Yeah.
You recognize over the course of your life, you will have high points and low points and just keep driving forward.
What has been that motivation for you to drive forward all these years, to continue to be successful, to continue to evolve, to continue to grow? What gets you up every day?
Um, I, I like, I really like solving problems, but I like proving to people in this industry and business, marketing is a very gate kept industry. Believe it or not, it's really one of the ones that it's weirdly has a lot of gatekeepers. If you do marketing in this kind of business, right? Like you can't do marketing for us because you've never done it in this field or this field or you don't have a marketing degree. So I like proving people wrong too in this field. There's a chip on my shoulder kind of a thing that I love to do that, but um, I just like solving problems then and making things work and figuring them out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the brands and things that I've worked for they're not sexy new things. It's not startup type things with a new product coming to market that you're hoping to find product market fit for anything. I've worked for a lot of brands and businesses, who provide a product or service to people that is necessary, but no one's going to think is sexy or like, hey, 10 million people want to talk about this thing, but they need it. So I love like, how do you take this product, you know, um, that may not be the coolest thing anyone's ever seen, but people need it. So how do you make that successful? Can we grow it? How big can it get? So I love solving those kind of problems and, you know, and knowing, that I can be right,
Yeah.
you know?
So, of all of these things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into at this point, what are you the proudest of?
Um, I would have to say that, taking that company, I think has been one of my best, business achievements because especially at that time, I left there 2000 later in 2018. So it's been a bit since I left that company too, but earlier in the e-commerce business time and the veteran business space. So there were others that were bigger than us when I first started. There were other brands that were bigger, who were more well known, and I passed them. Um, and then you're meeting once you start getting to certain sales levels, you start meeting with all these business people who are telling you that you're really just lucky, that none of you knew what you were doing. You just lucked into this because none of us, my other two partners, the founder and the other partner and I, so there were three of us who were partners. None of us had marketing degrees. My other two guys didn't have college degrees, even. We were just three veterans who just hustled and figured things out and worked hard at it. But then we started to have people tell us you were lucky and you're an overnight success and, you know, you guys don't really know what you're doing and you need somebody like us to come in and help you. I'm like, I don't know, we're doing $50 million this year. I think we're doing okay without you. So, growing beyond that and despite what people thought about us, I think is really something. And again, with the team that we had too, all young people, we hired a bunch of folks who were young, hungry, no marketing degrees in that company. I had one marketing degree who came in late and that they were on our email and SMS team. But we built that place without anyone having a professional marketing degree or any actual professional marketing experience. And that became what it is today. It's 150 or $200 million company now. Now they're run by people. I'm out of there, right?
Yep.
The founder's out. There's only one of my partners who's left there. There's VC. That was a huge mistake. I voted for VC to come in. I will never do that again. Um, that was a huge mistake on my part. And now all of us are gone. And the guy who's running it now is came from Under Armour. So those kind of folks running it now, but
Gotcha.
we did it first and we grew it to where it was. Those
Yeah.
people came in now and stood on the shoulders of giants
Yep.
and now they say they're the ones who did it. But I'm pretty proud of that, what we did there with that team. It was an amazing time.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that you've known, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, I like to think of myself as, pretty easygoing and pretty easy to work with. I sometimes feel as though I'm a pushover and that I can be taken advantage of. And I've had people tell me that. But um, I think it's something that I learned in a restaurant business that I would rather be that way and err on the side of an employee. And yeah, maybe they are taking advantage of me. I don't know. But what's the alternative? Like, you know, you want to be such a hard ass. And I never have wanted to be that way. So I think my perception is, and I know even from 25 years ago in a restaurant business, there's still people I am friends with who were young employees of mine who are adults now that I'm still connected with, still talk to occasionally. So I know from that time that, you know, I think people have enjoyed working with me. Not everybody has. I'm certainly not perfect, but you know, I think overall I have tried to be a person who would err on the side of an employee. And, even if it means somebody might be taking advantage of me.
So we talked about sports before we got on officially, and both of us are obviously sports fans. You've had a lot of history with teams and athletics. If we get off this call and a time machine pulls up and you can go anywhere in the history of sports and see one game with your own eyes, where are you going?
Oh, what game am I? Probably, what the 75 series,
Yeah.
the Fisk
Uh,
home run, Boston.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'd want to see that or maybe Gibson's, home
Yeah.
run,
What a
seeing
call
that.
Vin Scully did on that.
Yeah,
I could
gosh,
listen to that. It was so,
you know, I, I know as a Cubs fan, I'm supposed to maybe pick a Cubs thing, but I saw a lot of Cubs stuff. But man, those two things to me and baseball's always been my sport and thing. You can maybe see behind me that's a Bull Durham poster.
yeah.
Um, and then I've got on the other side right here,
16 Cubs. Yeah.
That's a Cubs World Series
Uh-huh. Yeah.
autograph stuff there. So baseball's been such a thing for me. So, those two things. I played baseball against Casey Fisk back in
Wow.
high school and stuff. So Carlton's son when he was here. So Carlton had been to a few games. Um, So yeah, those two things I think are just iconic and huge. It would have been, amazing to be a part of those things, especially that.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirk Gibson, like, you know, when he was on the Tigers, I thank Gibson for what he did in the '84 World Series, beating the Padres, who had beat the Cubs in that playoff that year. So I always thanked Gibson for what he did to the Padres. But man, that home run
Yeah.
I think is one of the most awesome moments in all of sports.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My moment, you may not like this if you're into Boston at all, would be the moment that ball went underneath Billy Buckner's legs in game six. I was a huge Mets fan. And
Oh
I
God. Oh, it's awful. So Bill Buckner was one of my favorite players. I cried the day that Bill Buckner was traded.
wow.
So Cubs traded Buckner to Boston. We got Eckersley.
Wow, I didn't
We got
realize that.
Eckersley in that trade to Boston. So that's how Eckersley came to the Cubs. But I cried. I cried the day that Bill Buckner, and then the Red Sox became my second favorite team then. So that is prior to the '84 season that we had lost Buckner to the Red Sox. And so I always loved Bill Buckner. And man,
I do too.
that was
And
a sad.
yeah, and he played for the Royals for a little bit. This is the weird trivia I didn't realize until recently. He was not supposed to be in the game. They only put him in the game
Yeah,
because they were going to win. They were a couple outs away. He had bad knees and the humidity would it flared. I don't know who the dude was that was supposed to be in there, but that was the only reason. So the whole thing is this weird Shakespearean, like how did this happen? So, but I've always felt bad for
terrible.
Bill. Yeah,
Oh, and
you
I
know.
hate, gosh, if you're a Mets fan, I truly hated that '86 Mets
I
team.
bet you did. I bet
Up
you
and
did.
down that lineup.
Yeah.
Every one of those guys. Every
Yeah.
one of them.
I bet
Daryl
you did.
Strawberry,
Yeah.
Mookie Wilson,
Yeah.
you know. Dwight Gooden's fine. Gooden was pretty excellent and awesome and an awesome curveball, but you know, Keith Hernandez,
I
all of
know.
them. Gary Carter.
Perfect villains. Perfect
God.
villains.
They're like the Pistons in the
That's
90s and
right.
you know,
Yeah. Who was that big dude in the middle? There was
Lambeer, Bill
yes.
Lambeer or
Man,
you
that's
know,
right. Yeah, they were villainous, you know.
oh, they were.
Man,
It's
th
fun.
so if anyone wants to learn more, reach out, any of the good business in your world, where can they go?
You can find me. I am on all kinds of social media as I run Round Two at Marketing. So it's r2itm.com. You can find me. And then that's our handles too on social media, r2itm.
Okay.
So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Excellent. Mike, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. I'm so glad I ran into you.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure. A lot of fun
absolutely.
talking about this stuff.
It totally. So before we leave, I just got a quick question off camera here. I have been, okay, I'll make it short. I have been getting assailed by people that want to help me get my videos in a better place with SEO. Is there a way that I can do that on my own? Is SEO that hard for me to administer on my own? Okay.
No, not really.
Okay. What would be the
Yeah.
best resource for me to look into to do it, like a how-to?
Like oh gosh, here, let me take a look at a link. The the AI things help you a
Oh,
lot with SEO. So you can
okay.
ask Chat GPT, what do I need? And you can ask it to analyze your website and say what's missing for SEO on my website. It'll
Ah,
give you your checklists and things for you. You know, I'm not a
that.
huge AI fan, but there are some things that it's good for, and it'll help you with that.
Okay.
And then on your SEO side, like for your videos and stuff that you're looking at, it's really like, how do you hope for people to find you? So what kind of searches do you think people would find you for? And what do you think people are Googling that they want to come to you for? So then you just start building in those kind of keywords into when you put a video like this up, for example, on YouTube, it's in your descriptions.
Yeah.
You're using those things. So it's not terribly difficult.
Gotcha.
SEO is really about just creating enough content and taking the time to do it. And then making
Okay.
sure that your website is actually, you have all your H1 tags done, you
Gotcha.
know, and then that's what Claude is one that I use.
Okay. Okay.
Claude's a good one. I
Okay.
like Google's also. I use Google's, I think as Gemini is what Google's is called.
Okay.
I like Google's for it because Google is the SEO place, right?
Right.
So when I ask that questions, you assume that it has good access to Google information. And so that's why I like using it to look at websites and do things, especially on the Google side of things. So
Okay.
um,
Okay.
it's
Cool.
it's it's not terribly difficult.
Okay. That
Um,
that makes sense. You totally opened up a portal to my brain that I needed. I just
yeah.
needed someone that's an expert to say boom, boom, boom. That makes total sense. Because I just started using Chat GPT for some work stuff, and it's been awesome. And it's easy and it gets right to the heart of the matter. So yeah, and you can set up keywords for every successive video that are always there, whether it's
Mhm.
100% applicable to that. But if I come up with a good boilerplate, it'll always be in there every time I post.
And it's one of those things too. So I don't use AI for copy a whole lot,
Yeah,
but it can guide you anyway as a starting point.
sure.
Especially so if you tell it to, hey, I have this YouTube video. This is what it's about. These are keywords in here. Can you help me with a my YouTube description for this?
Gotcha.
So it'll really help you write out rather than I see a lot of people sometimes just take their transcript and they make that their YouTube
Yeah.
description, but which is fine maybe after you do like a header section that
Uh-huh. Yeah.
you're intending for SEO, um, but yeah, that's where AI has some benefit.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Mike, that was perfect. Thank you, sir. Again, this was a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad we met. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I appreciate. I'm glad I found you.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of
So.
luck, sir.